And what we're going to do is when we click this animation box, we're going to trigger this animation, which is currently happening when I hover. Let's see how we do that. The easiest way to trigger an animation is to have the animation property, in this case right, apply to a specific class combination. So what I'll do is instead of just dot animation, I'm going to go animation dot start. This class added on to the animation div will now create right changing to 80%. But when we load the page, we can see that if I inspect the gray box, it just has box and animation as its classes. So what we need to do is use jQuery to add a class onto this div, which will then trigger an animation. It's a very good technique for having things happen within websites and or applications. First off, we're going to need to have a click event for the animation button. You can see here's the animate box button here. That would be step one. Secondly, we're going to need to add a class of start to the animation div. That's going to be our step number 2. Now what I've just done here is what's known as pseudocode. With pseudocode, we just map out some instructions so we know what we need to code, and we set them out in steps, basic steps. You can write it down on a piece of paper, or you can do it as comments like I've done here. First of all, let's get our click event going. I'll use a jQuery selector, the $ in the parentheses, my quotations, and I'm going to have to target the animate button. Now, what I've got here is an ID that I've put on the animate box button, and it's called animate box. You can see here that the A of the first word is small and the B of the second word is large. This is what's known as camel case, and we use this for JavaScript in jQuery. So I'm going to use this ID. Go back down to my code. It's an ID, so I use a hash, and I type in animate box dot click parentheses colon. I've just set up a click event on the animate box button. Now within the click parentheses, I'm going to type function parentheses curly brackets. This is the click function area, and it's how click works in jQuery. So we can put all of our action code within the function. Everything underneath the action code symbol there will happen after we click. Let's do a test. First, I'll set up an alert saying clicked. Reload, clicking the button. There we go. The click symbol pops up. Alerts are very useful for testing code. If you just want to make sure that the click is actually working, which is always a good idea, use an alert. You'll notice that it even works if I don't put a semicolon in, and it will tell you whether the code is working or not. Now the next thing I want to do is this step of the code. I want to add a class to the animation div, meaning I'm going to add a class of start to this box here. Now to do that, we're going to use something called Jquery's Addclass method. Let's have a look at that in the jQuery documentation. If I go to Google and I Google Jquery Addclass, we're going to see this link appear in Google search results. This will take us to the jQuery API documentation. Addclass is a method, kind of like a function, that you can use in jQuery, just like hide and show, fade in, fade out, click, all of those different methods that we've used before. And with add class, what we do, if we scroll down, is we just add a class to whatever we're targeting. So for this paragraph, it's going to add a class of my class, your class. Let's do it for our code. I'm going to go $selector, and I'm going to target the .animation div. And I'm going to go .add class. And then I'm going to use the quotation marks and set up a class that I will need to add. Let's slow down for 1 second just to remember what we're doing. When we click on this button, we want to add the class of start to this div, meaning the animation div. So what I do is I have animation selected, then I say add class, and I just type in the word start. Now you'll notice that even though I'm adding a class, I didn't put a dot in there. And that's just how jQuery works. When you're selecting a class, you use the dot, but when you're using a method to add classes, we just use the word itself. We don't need to put the dot in there to tell jQuery that we're using a class. It's something that you just have to memorize as you work with different code. Let's save this and see if it works. I'm going to reload the page, click the animate box, and then you can see the box moves from right to left. Now the cool thing is, with Inspector, you can see as well that start has been added. Let's reload the page. Right now, there's no start word within the class list of the animation box. But when I click this button, you can see that start appears. And that's the power of JavaScript within HTML. You can basically change anything you want immediately. You can change CSS, the words that are sitting within a page, colors, CSS, anything. And tomorrow, when we look at keyframe animations, we'll also have a quick look at the CSS method within jQuery.